Welcome everyone to the Cup of Coffee podcast with me, your host, Tom Dillon. This has been recorded live at our weekly online meeting and broadcast around the world. Wow, my voice is fine. No, it's fine. Today's topic is unlocking success in UK residential property management, insights into 5 crucial factors with Sharon, who we've had on before. And in fact, it was her massive success, which is, as you know, success is based these days completely on numbers. And so she had lots of listeners or viewers or whatever, listeners at the time, because we weren't putting out podcast, YouTube videos then. So we got her back on. You're welcome. Before what?
All right, Tom. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, good. Yeah, smashing. Before we start, just like to say by way of a disclaimer that today is a wonderful discussion, but nothing said here constitutes financial advice. You should always take professional advice before investing your hard-earned cash. There may be the odd unplanned swear word along the way as well. The format for today is that Sharon will speak to us for a while, and then we'll take some questions from the floor. Sharon started investing in UK residential property in the early 2000s and has a portfolio of single-lets and HMOs across the Northwest. 10 years ago, she took the plunge and left a successful 20-year career in a FTSE 100 company. It's a stupid name, FTSE, in it. The Americans must be laughing at us. What have they got? S&P sounds much better. The FTSE 100 company, where she was managing multi-million-pound strategic programs. She set up Foxdog Properties, which has grown to help investors based all over the world. Investing in the UK, specialising in managing HMOs, that's houses of multiple occupation, and handling around £1 million in rent each year. Sharon is now sharing her extensive knowledge through her second business, the Property Management Programme, helping fellow investors navigate the complex terrain of property management to ensure that they not only remain compliant with the ever-evolving regulations, but also achieve the profitability that every astute investor is looking for. Before I go over to Sharon, which we obviously will do in a minute, I'm doing a quick plug time. It's not Surfshark or any of that. Bear with. And crikey, we don't do many adverts on it, but this is self-admittedly a nice little advert because it's coming up to that time of year again where everyone starts doing property mentoring. They shouldn't do. They should do property mentoring throughout the year. But the truth of it is, everyone gets to this point and goes, Jesus Christ, what happened in 2023? We mustn't let that happen again in 2024. I need to get me some help. It's usually, and by the way, that's me as well. Also do that at the same time every year. So quick shout out for our property mentoring. Good news is, I think we've got the best URL for it. It's bestpropertymentoring.com. I couldn't believe that was available either, but it was. And so we're £8 down. But if you go and check out bestpropertymentoring.com, you'll find out the best property mentoring in the world, which is with me and my business partner, Chris. We've got a couple of slots opened up. Again, people often do a year and then sort of running to the end about now. So unusually we're doing a discount code, which we haven't done, I think, since we haven't done it for like 2 years, I don't think. And we'll run that to the end of the year. I'll put the discount code in the show notes, or if you just drop an email to office@greatnorthernproperty.co.uk with the subject property mentoring. You don't even need to write an email. Just do that and we'll get back to you with some details. No obligation or any nonsense like that. Our mentees have had great success. Pretty much all of them have either achieved or overachieved their goals again this year. There's a nice video on the bestpropertymentoring.com website. They're right at the top there with some of our previous mentees. Who all seem pretty happy. All the ones who weren't happy, obviously, we didn't put in the video. That seems sensible. No, there weren't that many happy ones. In fact, by chance, we've got one of our mentees here today. In the shape of the lovely Elaine. Elaine, with no pressure at all, and not under duress in any way, and not in a pre-organized fashion, just a general chat. Have you been enjoying your mentoring? And God forbid, have you actually done anything? Has anything good come out of it?
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Elaine.
Yeah, I've been mentoring with you for 6 months, so since June until December. So we'll be finishing up in December. Yeah, it's been really good. So Tom and Chris are extremely knowledgeable and they have loads of experience between them in property. And the best thing is they hold you accountable. So you tell them your goals and they actually go, oh, actually, you want to work towards these goals, don't you? And you go, oh, sometimes I don't feel like it, but then you feel like, oh, I need to be accountable to these people. So then it motivates you from an external perspective. So I do highly recommend their mentoring. So even one phone call, my first phone call with Tom, I learned so much. I also highly recommend Tom's couple meetings as well, like the whole community. I want to give a special shout out to Kathy and Howard and Julie and Krishna, and I've learned so much from you guys. The community of Copper is just amazing, and Tom, it's all due to Tom. Tom has set it up and has kept it running for so long, and that's absolutely amazing. So yeah, thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Obviously, checks in the post, same as every year. We appreciate that feedback. It's really nice to get, you know. All right. What else? We're well aware. There was let me tell you a very quick story, and I promise you this is very quick, which is when I started back in, I'll tell you about a young boy in 2000. It's me, a young boy in 2013, 12, when I started out in property. I was earning about 200 quid a month, working 7 hours a week at Halfords, which is the only job I could get at the time. And I'm grateful to them because, you know, it was 200 quid more than anyone else was going to give me. But what I worked out was that I couldn't afford to go to property networking meetings, which were then about 20 quid a time and now are about 30 quid a time. And that's fine. Those overheads, I wasn't cross about that. Those are great meetings, but I just couldn't afford it. So that's when I set up Cuppa, because I thought, well, let's try and do something that's free. So with that in mind, when we came to do the property mentoring, we thought, what about those people like me when I started out who just couldn't afford, you know, a few £100 a month, whatever it was, very reasonably priced, by the way, but I just couldn't afford that at the time. So as well as the paid property mentoring, visit bestpropertymentoring.com. We also do occasional, as our way of giving back. We do free group mentoring programs for those who, you know, maybe just starting out or just simply just haven't got the cash at the minute, because that seems like a nice thing to do and a way of giving back. So we will put applications for that. The details how to apply for that application will open on the 1st of December, will probably open for a couple of weeks, and then we'll, you know, decide, and with an idea of starting that group off in January. Details to be in the show notes, and also on our very active, we'll post them in our very active Cup of Coffee WhatsApp group, which Elaine sort of referenced there. If you're not in the Cup of Coffee WhatsApp group, I strongly, maybe if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I think it's probably worth, up to you, of course, free world, but it might be worth coming to one of the live meetings at least once. We've got Bernard has kindly turned up from Australia today. I don't know if he's come with this in mind, but he will now be eligible for joining our WhatsApp group, which has about 260 active investors in it. So that's worth coming to the meeting once, because that's the only prerequisite for joining the group, is having attended the meeting in person or online at least once. Bestpropertymentoring.com. Over to Sharon. Taking enough of Sharon's time here, but I wanted to do a shout out to Sharon because you know, there's the old Greek idea. There's lots of old Greek ideas I'm not that big on, I'll be honest. But one of the good Greek old ideas from ancient Greece is that and it was all men at the time, but every person should be a mentor to somebody, but also should be a mentee at the same time. You know, the learning should go down the tree. You should learn from somebody and then pass that knowledge on, and everybody expands as a result. Well, worth noting that Sharon did some mentoring for me earlier this year, and it was fabulous. We were focused on the property management side of things and systems side of things, and it was great. I really learned a lot, and particularly how to systemize things and what to focus on in property management to make sure it's profitable and streamlined. So thanks to Sharon for that. And if anyone's interested, obviously check out Sharon as her offerings and programs as well. Right, on with the show. Hello, Sharon.
Morning, Tom. Thanks for that. That was great introduction. Sounds like you've been busy as well, so all good.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Albania a few days ago, come back from a trip there. Great if anyone gets the chance, they should go out there. Direct flights from Manchester, lovely, friendly people, and we were round and about Montenegro and bits and pieces. So we've been traveling for a little while, and really glad excited to do that, and glad to be back. Speaking of excitements, what have you got for us today?
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about 5 crucial factors that underpin success in residential property management. And I use the word residential specifically, so this is about single lets and HMOs specifically, because that's my area of expertise. So it's not commercial, but I'm of the view that most people in this group are looking at single lets, HMOs, student lets, SA, that sort of thing. Oh, excuse me, a bit of a cold coming on. So I wanted to focus on that today in terms of property management. Now, I know for many people, property management is the less sexy side of property investing. So there's lots of courses out there, and I'm sure you know the stuff that you do, Tom, as well. Really exciting in terms of investment strategy, choosing your location, how to achieve your long-term goals, all that sort of thing. But from my experience, the property management side is the boring side. But I think, as you said earlier, Tom, before we started this podcast, is that boring can be profitable. And that's really where excellent property management comes in that it's, as Warren Buffett says, you don't have to do extraordinary things to achieve extraordinary results. You simply have to do everyday ordinary things exceedingly well. And that's what I concentrate on. So with the property management program, that's what we focus on, is how to do the day-to-day stuff, which is not rocket science, and then not a silver bullet that it's going to, you know, skyrocket your investment portfolio overnight. It's about doing the foundational basics exceptionally well, so that you're not only compliant but also profitable. Because after all, the whole reason we got into property investing was to create cash flow, to be profitable, to have a return on investment. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, really, is to highlight some of the key areas, and I've chosen 5 key areas where I see people make a lot of mistakes. So I want to explain to you what those mistakes are and how you can avoid them. So the whole point of training like this and communities like this is to learn from other people. So you don't have to go through the pain and the cost of the mistakes. You can learn from other people and go much more direct to the success that you're looking for. So that's what I'm going to cover today. So as Tom said in the introduction, my background is in corporate. I spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder in a FTSE 100 company, primarily in strategic and change management areas, but also it was a heavily regulated industry. So I'm very used to identifying and managing risk, which is what I now bring to the property management industry as a whole. And that's where I try and focus my efforts. I view it as almost like playing a game, like you play Monopoly. You need to know the rules of the game in order to win and be successful. And that's what I'm trying to share with people with regards to property management. At the last count, there was over 150 laws that impact on the private rented sector. And we can all see there are significant changes happening at the moment with the Renters Reform Bill currently going through Parliament. That's currently at committee stage, and that will bring even more changes to the sector. So it's about keeping on top of all of that, about understanding the rules and making sure that you're successful. So I started investing early 2000s. I say we, me and my husband, Steve, we both had successful careers at that time, and we viewed property as our pension pot. So we just bought some properties. Didn't really know anyone else buying property. There weren't any training courses available back then or anything. 2011, the global recession that started with the housing crisis in America in around 2008-9 finally caught up with the car industry where Steve was working. And he got the option to take voluntary redundancy. We decided to take that option and to change our lives effectively, and nothing's been the same since. Now, since then, we decided that it'd be a good idea to take some professional property training to kickstart our investing journey again, and that's what we did. And back then, we still had fortunate enough to have a little bit of Steve's redundancy money left. And also then then because of the recession, there were lots of distressed and repossessed properties. So we were quite fortunate that we were able to implement what was called a momentum investing strategy. I think it's been rebadged since then by refurbished rent now. But back then when we were taught it, it was momentum investing strategy. And this is where you buy a property below market value, you refurbish it, add value to it and refinance it to pull your money back out. So you're recycling your money to build your portfolio. And that was a very successful strategy for us. So much so that very quickly, a friend of ours asked if we wanted to go into a joint venture partnership with him to build a portfolio together. And that 10 years later, that partnership's still going strong. So that was very successful for us. Now, I'm not sure where people are up to in terms of their property investing journey and how much training you've had. But if you've been on some of these bigger training programs, I won't name the big providers, we all know who they are, they talk about passive investing in property. I've never heard such a load of rubbish in my life. It definitely is not passive. Certainly not from my experience. And I'm guessing even if you've got an agent who is working for you, you're still going to say it's not particularly passive. So we were using agents at that time because we were following what we were taught on the training course: use an agent and you focus on other things. But we just weren't happy with the service we were getting. I'm sure, again, you know, I'm not going to go into too much detail or name any names, but the agent we were using at the time was not particularly responsive to tenants' questions or reports of maintenance issues. So our properties were deteriorating because the agent wasn't really managing them very well. And that is a key thing that was a big issue for us. I was always having to chase the rent and rent statements and all that sort of thing. And we thought, you know what, we can do this better ourselves. So we brought it in-house. And that's how we ended up setting up Foxdog Properties. So that's our core day-to-day business in terms of property management. And the principles there are essentially that, you know, we have a proactive approach to maintenance across properties. I say I've managed my own portfolio, and I like to think that I manage our clients' properties as if they were our own as well. So we're very proactive with maintenance issues, managing tenants and providing the information in a timely manner. So the background to property management program, how that came about, was during lockdown, which I can't believe was like 3 years ago now. It's like, where does the time go? It was incredible. But at that time, during the first stage of lockdown, we couldn't go and visit any properties. We couldn't do viewings. We couldn't attend maintenance visits unless they were urgent or legally compliant. So I used that time to set up the property management program. And as you said in the introduction, Tom, this was more about helping fellow property investors navigate the complex regulatory environment. So what we've done is we've put together all sorts of different resources. As you say, we do offer some one-to-one mentoring, but we also have effectively a business in a box, a manual of all of our business processes, systems and checklists, and we have some online training as well. So getting back to the point of today and why you're all here is the 5 crucial factors and mistakes that other people have made that you guys can learn from so that you don't make them. The first one is around demographics, and this is a huge topic, really. I'm briefly just going to touch on it today, and it surprises me even to this day how few people have actually heard of demographics. We were quite fortunate that this did come up in our training when we did our training with a large training provider, and it has been the key to success, I would say. So what is demographics? This is about understanding the area that you're investing in and the people that live in the area that you are going to attract to your property. I've seen so many investors create high quality HMOs, really, really high end HMOs, but in completely the wrong area. And then they wonder why they can't fill the rooms, why they're having to drop the rents massively to even get some inquiries. They might end up with tenants in there that, you know, have got problems with antisocial behaviour and end up damaging the property. And they really just don't understand what they've done wrong. So when you're investing in property, you need to be looking at matching up your investment strategy with your target area. And when you're looking at an area, you want to be looking at things like, what are the other properties in the area like? Are they single lets? Are they HMOs? Are they private rented? Are they serviced accommodation? Are they owner occupied? You want to be taking a look at facilities in the area. So are there any shops? Is there a large supermarket or a corner shop? What about parks, gyms, bars, restaurants? Is there a cinema? Is there a theatre? What are the transport and parking options for people that live there? You know, is there a bus stop or a train station nearby? What are the local employers? Are there any local employers, or do people have to travel miles to get to work? Is there one big local employer that the whole area depends on, that if for any reason they were to go out of business or move away, the area would be in trouble in terms of employment? All of these sorts of things you want to be looking at. What's the unemployment rate like? What's the crime rate in the area like? These are really, really important questions that you need to be asking yourself before you start buying a property. So let me give you a really stark example of what I mean by matching up your investment strategy with your investment area. Let's say, for example, you've decided you want to invest in student HMOs. Okay, so that's your target market. You want students in your property that you've created as a HMO. Now, you don't go to the middle of a rural countryside, miles away from anywhere, to turn a nice big house into a student HMO. There's no public transport. It takes ages in the car to get there. There's no pubs or restaurants. There's no social facilities. They're miles away from the campus. You're not going to attract students to that property. And the mistake that I see people make is, just because you can turn a property into HMO doesn't mean to say that you should. You need to make sure that all of the factors line up and that you are going to be attracting the right sort of tenants to your property, and that the tenants want to live in the area where you are creating this. Now, I'm talking about HMOs because this is what we specialise in, but the principle also applies to single lets as well. You need to be matching up the property, the investment, with the area that you want to invest in. It's similar if you are, wanting to attract healthcare professionals, for example. You want the property to be close to the hospital or to the care home or their workplace, essentially. Particularly with HMOs, people are less likely to have a car. Some do, but less likely. Particularly overseas, we specialise in placing people arriving from overseas for work in the NHS in particular, in our rented properties. So these people are not going to have a car when they first arrive. So everything needs to be easily accessible to them. Now, just because you're not aiming for students or healthcare professionals doesn't mean to say all of the tenants are the same. They're not a homogenous group. You really need to drill down and specify who is your ideal tenant that you want in your property. So if you're like, I want to do a really nice high-end HMO and I want white-collar professional workers, I want graduates going to a big local employer, well, you therefore need to make sure that your property is in that vicinity to be able to attract those people there. You want local facilities that people rely on. Someone doesn't necessarily want to move to the middle of nowhere where they can't meet their friends. There's no gym or park or anything for them to go to. Now, you might have a tenant who does want that. You might have, a couple who are taking early retirement and want peace and quiet in the countryside. Well, that's your tenant then, not a student. And so hopefully by making that very stark example, I've made the point in terms of you need to match your investment area with your investment strategy. The other thing that one of the other key reasons why I'm talking about demographics is that the other key mistake I see people make is not understanding the financial viability of tenants in a particular area. Again, all of this information is available. I'll share a website where you can go and it answers all of these questions, and it's free, so it's fantastic. But you want to be looking at the employer in the area. I'll give you an example. Close to where I live, there's a big Amazon fulfillment centre, and when it opened, it was the only major employer in that area. Now, the jobs there are going to be essentially blue-collar jobs, so warehouse order pickers effectively. And it was quite easy to research how much money people were being offered for these jobs. Now, reports show that tenants shouldn't be paying more than about 30% of their income in rent. They need the rest of that to cover, you know, clothing, transport, food, other expenses. If they pay more than 30% towards their rent, they will struggle and they will be in financial difficulty. So there's no point creating a really, really nice high-end property where actually all of the people who are coming to the area to work are going to be on effectively minimum wage jobs. They simply won't be able to afford the rent in your property. And that's why if you build a HMO in the wrong area, you are not going to achieve the rents that you need in order to achieve your cash flow goals. So hopefully I've explained that point really well. A good place to go to is a website called streetcheck.co.uk. So you might want to make a note of that and go and check that. This is a fantastic site. It's absolutely free. All you need to do is put in a postcode of the property that you're looking to invest in, and it will answer all of those questions that I just mentioned. It will tell you about the split between men and women, the age difference, qualifications. It will tell you about property types. It will tell you about unemployment rates. It will tell you about crime rates. Now, when you're starting out doing this, it's quite difficult to understand what that information is telling you. So a really good trick is to put the postcode in of your own property and have a look at the area. And that's a really good way to baseline understanding what the website's telling you, because obviously you know your area. What really struck me when I did this on my home address was that there were quite, in the crime statistics, there was quite a high percentage of domestic abuse cases, which really, really shocked me because I wasn't aware of that in my area. This is stuff that, you know, goes on behind closed doors and you don't see that. You know, you go to the local shop and everything like that and you've got no hassle. There's no kids hanging around on the corner, all that sort of thing. So you want to be having a look at that and going to check that. This is particularly valuable if you are investing out of where you currently live. So we help a lot of clients who are based all over the country and overseas. So it's not like they can just pop down the road and have a mooch around. One of the things you will get taught on property training is to go to the area and effectively walk the streets and find out what's going on there. Now, I do appreciate for everybody that's not always possible. So this website, streetcheck.co.uk, is the place to go. So I've gone out strong here. That's the biggest mistake that I see people make. But this really is the difference between having a profitable portfolio and one that's struggling. And I do see this time and time again. So if you don't take anything else away from today, it's that website and go and check out demographics. Okay, right, I'm conscious of time, so I'll rattle through the others. I did want to spend a bit of time on that because I think, in my experience, that's the most expensive mistake you can make. The next crucial factor you want to look at is insurance. Make sure you've got the right insurance for your property. I'm currently going through my annual review to make sure that I've got the right policies and at the most competitive premium. What you will tend to find is that if you are looking at policies at the moment and you're going out looking for different quotes, you might find you get a really cheap quote and a really expensive quote for what on the face of it looks to be the same thing. It probably isn't. The biggest mistake I see with people with insurance is they don't read the small print. Again, it's boring, but it could save you thousands and thousands of pounds. You need to understand what the exclusions and excesses are. And one particular clause that can make all the difference is something called malicious tenant damage cover. So I make sure that all my policies have this included, and this effectively means that you are covered for any criminal damage that your tenant carries out inside your property. There are policies out there you can get, like effectively landlord policies, but they exclude this. So what that means is if you've legitimately put a tenant in there and they are under an AST and they're paying the rent and all the rest of it. But if they have a big party and smash the place up, or decide to put a cannabis farm in and then you get your property back all trashed, if you don't have this malicious tenant damage cover clause, then you're not covered for those repair costs. So it's really, really important that you make sure you have this. So insurance for me is a key foundation in terms of what I would call asset protection strategy. So once you've got your property and your investment, how do you best protect yourself and your asset going forwards to make sure you're not incurring lots and lots of costs? The next point is on referencing. So for those of you who don't necessarily know, all of the UK has devolved governments. In England, and England only, under the Immigration Act, we have an obligation to check people's right to rent. Now that, in terms of referencing, is the only obligation you have. All other referencing is optional. And I do know some people who don't carry out any checks at all. They just simply meet somebody on the viewing, handshake, and they're good to go. That's absolutely fine. That's not a problem at all. It's really your decision at the end of the day on whatever you're comfortable with. However, I would say I have experienced quite a traumatic eviction, and this is pre-COVID. So pre-COVID, it took 8 months to get somebody out of a property. Now, fortunately, they didn't damage the place, but they didn't particularly look after it, but they didn't pay any rent. So it was very expensive by the time of no rent and solicitors' costs. And to be honest, it would have taken longer, except that the utility companies came in and put prepayment meters in. And therefore they couldn't afford the utilities. They were massively in debt, and that was the only reason they moved out. It could have dragged on for months after that. I dread to think now, post-COVID, with all the court delays, how long it would take to actually get somebody out at the moment. And I'm of the view that I would rather have an empty room or an empty house for an extra month or so to find the right person than have all of that stress and hassle and cost. And also, as a responsible owner of my own property management business, I feel as though I've got a duty of care to my clients to make sure that I get the best possible tenants and the lowest risk of defaulting on rent in future. As I sit here today and speak to you today, we are at 0 rent defaults across our business, and that's our target. Even during COVID, we peaked at 1%. And in that particular case, we did have a couple. I think there was within that 1%, there was like 2 people that we really struggled with, but we managed to put rent repayment plans in place, so we didn't have to go through the whole eviction process, and we did recover the money for the clients. Now, I do stress this because the last report I saw, government housing report I saw probably a while ago now, so it needs updating, was that the industry average for rent defaults is 10%. So I would say that's a testament to our referencing process, that we have avoided that. And I'm going to guess that going in, the current cost of living crisis that we've got at the moment, this, I think, will only increase in future. So referencing for me is an absolutely key area, again, to make sure that you've got the best financially viable people in your property. Now, I could talk about referencing all day. I'll just quickly give you an insight into what we do. So we check not only current landlord, but previous landlord. We tend to find previous landlords are slightly more honest. Current landlords are very factual about whether their tenant is in place, whether they're in rent arrears or not. But you might find that the current landlord is trying to get rid of a problem tenant and won't give you the full story. So by going to a previous landlord, we can ask much more searching questions in terms of their behaviour. Would they have them back? Were they issued a notice? That sort of thing. And that's also really, really helpful. In terms of employment, we ask for pay slips, but pay slips is historic. And we have had some cases where tenants have been applying for a property, provided pay slips, but they're actually leaving that role for various different reasons. So you want to check with their employer that they will still be in employment when they move into your property. Make sure they're not, haven't been made redundant or sacked, or they're on a fixed term contract that's coming to an end shortly. You want to make sure they're still going to be earning money once they're in your property. So that's important. We look at bank statements as well. Bank statements are a real good insight into someone's financial viability and how capable they are of managing their finances. And this is nothing to do with how much they earn. I've seen people come to us earning over £100,000 a year, and their finances are in an absolute mess. And I wouldn't rent to them at all. They're spending more than they earn. They're juggling credit cards and loans. They're living out of an overdraft. And that's a house of cards that's going to come tumbling down, and you're going to be the one stuck not receiving your rent. So this is about how financially competent is somebody. You can also tell from the bank statements that their salary's going in, that they're paying their other bills on time. You can check for red flags, like, you know, do they are they like a gambling addict or something like this. All of these sorts of things you can check, and it's really, really useful. Right, okay, I'm going to skip the rest of the referencing because I want to make sure I cover the other 2 points off, and I'm conscious of time. So if you've got any questions on this, particularly around referencing, you want to drop me an email after the session. More than happy to have a chat or help you out with any questions you might have. Okay, deposits is another area where I see people struggle. There's a lack of understanding of the rules around deposits. Again, deposits are purely optional. You don't have to take a deposit if you don't want to. We as a business did experiment not taking deposits some time ago, and it was absolutely disastrous. Pretty much every tenant that we didn't ask a deposit for ended up being troublesome in some way or other, and I wouldn't go back to that. We ask for 5 weeks deposit, which is the maximum allowed under the Tenant Fee Act. And that's because we find that you get much better tenants that have been able to save for a deposit in the first place, so it shows they're financially viable, but also they need to have some skin in the game. They need to have some financial consequences of, if, for example, they damage something or they don't pay the rent. They need to have some financial skin in the game. We had one tenant, the tenant I mentioned earlier, that took us 8 months to get out. That was one of the ones we experimented not taking a deposit with, and we took the council bond scheme. So that, I don't know if you're aware of this, but some councils will offer a letter of guarantee to underwrite the deposit. So you don't actually get the money to put in a deposit scheme, but you get a letter from the council. So we then approached the council and said, right, okay, this tenant has defaulted, we need to claim on the deposit. The council paid, not a problem at all, but the deposit was so small in comparison to the 8 months worth of unpaid rent. It's like it was a drop in the ocean. And when we contacted the tenant about it, she just went, oh, I don't care, it's not my money, it's nothing to do with me. And I think that just sums up the attitude. So about getting the right tenant is about their attitude as well, in terms of, are they taking responsibility for themselves? Are they taking responsibility for their lives and their financial situation? With deposits, you need to make sure that you protect the money that you've taken within 30 days of receipt, and that's a receipt of the money. It's not the start date of the tenancy agreement. So that's quite important as well, to make sure you don't fall foul of that. There's also a lot of paperwork. Property management in general is about making sure your paperwork is in order, and there are lots of fines and penalties simply for not having the right paperwork in place, and that applies for deposits as well. You need to issue the prescribed information and the terms and conditions to the tenant within 30 days of receipt of the money, and you need to give them the opportunity to sign that as well. And now you can protect the money in the deposit scheme. There are 3 approved government schemes in England. Even if you protect the money but you don't do the paperwork, you're at risk of having to give the tenants compensation. And this could be anything from paying the deposit back up to 3 times the value of the deposit. Currently, we still have Section 21s in place at the moment. We won't forever, but currently, if your deposit has some irregularities in it, then you won't be able to rely on a Section 21 notice either. So the lack of paperwork can have serious consequences. A lot of the areas in property management, what seems to be a simple mistake, like, oh, I forgot to issue this document, can have material consequences further down the line. So it's really, really important. That's what I said at the beginning, is like getting the basics and the foundations right. Most people hate paperwork, but actually having the right documentation in place can save you thousands of pounds and loads of hassle at some point in the future. And the final point, I'll just quickly finish on this, and then hopefully there'll be a bit of time for Q&A if anybody's got any questions. The final point is inventories. Now, in property, I would suggest that inventory is a bit of a misnomer. It's the wrong term here. Now, again, could talk about inventories all day. I think Steve and I did do a presentation at Howard and Cathy's Asana event one time. We did a whole slot just on inventories. Now, the definition of an inventory is a list of items. And if that's what you do in your property, then you haven't got a leg to stand on when it comes to deposit disputes. And this is why inventories and deposits are so closely linked. What we do is really, really detailed condition reports, so the condition and inventory reports. So it sets out detailed descriptions of the property, fixtures and furnishings, any furniture, anything else you're providing, particularly in a HMO. And we're very, very thorough. Our documents are dozens and dozens of pages long, and we can have 60 to 70 photographs for a single room. That's how thorough our documents are. Now, you can do them yourself. There's loads of apps out there. So if you go on the App Store or Google Play, you can download the app. The app's usually free to download, and then either you pay a subscription on a monthly basis to get the report, or you can pay on a report by report basis. It is quite an interesting exercise to do. And this is one of the implementation activities we have in our training program, is to actually go and do an inventory on your own front room and just have a go. It'll give you a really good insight into what's involved, the level of thought and the level of detail that you need, and quite how time consuming it is as well. There are some organisations that say you need a third party to do an inventory. You don't, you really don't at all. We've had a couple of claims with the DPS. We've worked with them really closely. And their feedback is that as long as the document is factual and well evidenced, the whole point of having a third party to do it is so it's not biased, but it would be obvious within the document itself, really. You know, if you say, oh, it's lovely, newly, freshly decorated house, and the photo doesn't stack up with that description, that's what they're trying to avoid. So that's a really important point. The inventory needs to be current and up to date at the start of the tenancy to rely on it. And as I say, we've not had loads of claims with the DPS, but we've had several, and we've never lost one yet. And in some cases, not only have we managed to recover the whole deposit, but we've then been able to go back to the tenant and recover the balance of any further money as a result of lack of cleaning or any damage or unpaid rent that was over and above the deposit, because of the quality of our evidence. We treat it like going to court and putting a case forward. You'll see lots of people on landlord forums complaining that deposit schemes are biased towards the tenant. Well, let me tell you, they sort of are, but that's because there's a legal principle that underpins that, which is essentially that it's the tenant's money. So you are holding the money if you're using insurance-backed scheme, or the organisation is effectively holding it in escrow for the duration of the tenancy if you're using a custodial scheme. And it's the tenant's money, so the tenant is due their money back at the end of the tenancy, and the burden of proof is on the landlord to show that some or all of the deposit should be retained. And the main reasons usually are lack of cleanliness, damage, or unpaid rent. But you need to evidence that, and that's where a really, really robust inventory and condition report comes in. You've got before and after pictures and evidence and descriptions, and particularly as well, we get the tenants to agree to the inventory when they move in, so that they recognise that that is the condition of the room or the property when they move in. So I'm going to draw to a close there. I'm conscious of time, Tom. So hopefully that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour. If anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to take any now.
Right, well, thank you very much, Sharon. My head hurts. And as usual, when Sharon's finished speaking, I'm fairly confident. I don't know much, but I'm fairly confident I'm doing it all wrong. And that's and I need to immediately improve on all areas of property management. I've got a few questions. Get some bits and bobs in the chat. We had some nice comments, bits and pieces. I'll reference some of those in a minute. First of all, there was some nonsense at the start about you saying that property isn't passive. What's all this? I was told it's all it's land of milk and honey, isn't it? What's this nonsense?
Absolutely, that's what we were told as well. But yeah, if anyone else that tells me property is passive, they might get a punch in the nose, to be honest.
Sure.
I would also say as well that the biggest thing that I've learned is when I got into this, I thought I was investing in property, and it was all about strategy and spreadsheets and numbers and dealing with like brokers and mortgage lenders and all that sort of stuff, which is like suits my personality. But actually, property is not about that at all, really. It's about people. It's all about people. So like the brokers are people, but actually once you get into this and you've got property and you're building a portfolio, it's about getting the right tenants and having a good relationship with the tenants. It's about the contractors, and it's about people. It's not about property. And obviously you need to build a relationship with people, and that's very, very active. It's not passive.
Yeah, but hang on. You know, people's not one of your strengths, is it? So how does that fit in?
That's where you need to make sure that you have an appropriate team around you as well. So you need to make sure, I'm really keen on not only business development, but personal development. And there's loads of personality tests out there. I really like the Genius U one with Roger Hamilton. There's another one called I'm a High, which is also really good as well. So this is about understanding yourself, understanding your strengths, and then finding people that you can work with to create a really solid team to cover off all the bases effectively.
Very sensible, as you'd expect. What's that second one? I'm a High. I've not heard
I'm
of that.
High.
How do I
Yeah,
spell that?
it's a free report you can get, and basically it gives you a colour. It's a couple of questions. It's free to do, and then you get a little video telling you the strengths of your colour really, and how to interact with people of different. So you get like red, green, blue, and yellow, I think.
I'll be black. What? What's? Is it, unless it's top secret, what colour are you so I can compare it? I think I'm going to be the opposite to you.
Oh, I'm green. So
Green.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I'm going to go straight in there with my Paxman style question, which is more an NRLA advice line, which I realise this isn't. If anyone doesn't know, the NRLA advice line is very much worth getting involved in. But anyway, I've had some experience, a couple of experiences recently where I think for cultural reasons, people have. The tenants you mentioned some of my tenants have come in and they've started to use, there's a perfectly good central heating system and gas cooker and things in the property. They've started to use like big gas bottles with either as heaters or for cooking. Clearly, I can't speak for anyone else. Although I would say they sound a bit dangerous, and they do sound a bit dangerous. Like clearly, that seems like not a good thing. On the other hand, I've not had any problems with any of them, but that feels like not something I'm not going to want to wait for. But then I checked my tenancy, and we do have a thing in there saying, you know, basically you can't have massive gas bottles in the kitchen. But one of them doesn't have that because it's an older tenancy, whatever. It wasn't in there then. But I'm figuring just because something's in the tenancy, like it doesn't mean, you know, that you can have a big massive gas bottle in the kitchen. I was wondering how you'd approach something like that.
Yeah, okay. So I guess it comes back to having a good relationship with the tenant in the first place. So going back to the referencing, I would suggest referencing starts from the second somebody contacts you, and then, you know, building a relationship with them throughout that whole process. We have quite a detailed move-in process. So there's a lot of documentation you have to issue to tenants. And the common complaint I often get is, oh my word, there's so much information here, it's overwhelming. So we actually spend a good hour with each tenant when they move in, and we explain the key points of the paperwork, which would include things like what they are allowed and not allowed in the property, and how everything works in the property. One thing that staggers me today is so few people understand how gas central heating works. It absolutely beggars belief. And this is not just people from overseas, which is understandable because, you know, we're getting people from some countries where gas central heating is not a thing. So I get that. But these are like young, you know, English people must have grown up in a house with gas central heating, have got no clue. So we're spending a lot of time and effort at the moment putting a lot of training together, essentially where the tenants can go. So we explain stuff when they move in, but it's a bit like Men in Black, you know, that the next day they've forgotten everything they've told you. So we've got like a welcome pack that we put together with lots of different pieces of information in like that. And we're looking at building like a video library where people can go just to go, oh, I've got this question, I wonder what that answer is.
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, I think it's all about discussion. It's not going in saying, no, you definitely can't do that. Ask them why they're doing it. It might be that they don't know how the cooker works, or something really simple like that. You mentioned earlier about, it's really important to, well, we were talking about have a team around you. I also have a business coach as well. And one of the key things that he says is be curious, not judgmental. So don't assume the worst of people all the time. Just ask that question why first of all, and then have a discussion about it.
Sounds good. I think that's exactly what I'll do. On the insurance, I'm going into the 5 sort of main points you made there, or main areas you touched on. Was number 2 was insurance, and it was you were saying it's really important to read your insurance documents. If, like me, because me and Sharon are proudly, I think, different personalities are. If, like me, you hear that and go, yeah, I don't want to, I really, really, really don't want to, then, which is most people, I think, then don't. This is my countervailing point, and it goes back to what Sharon was saying about teams, which is, like, our business partner, Chris, and I've not read any of our insurance documents because I'd be asleep. I wouldn't make it through. I'd get to about the bottom of page 1, maybe, and I'd be out like a light. So, find somebody who either enjoys or at least doesn't mind doing that kind of thing for you. You won't be good at everything, and that's okay. Just find out what you're good at. But I absolutely agree that somebody should be reading your insurance documents and finding stuff out. We had a couple of questions about that. I had one recently on insurance about microwaves in my HMO, and it was almost through chance or through Chris checking out whatever. We realized that we weren't covered. One of the rooms had a microwave in it, and we checked it with our broker, and it was one of those things you go, oh, it's a microwave like a toaster or a kettle. No, not okay under the insurance. We had to get them to remove it, which is a real shame. And now we're looking at that insurance policies come up for renewal, and with microwave is quite a lot more. It's something like £300 a year more to have a or many microwaves in the rooms in the HMOs, in this particular HMO, and we're just simply going to put it to the tenant, say, we can have your microwave back, but it's going to cost you this. Would you like to do that? Because it seems like not sort of bare essential necessity type thing. But again, I was wondering if that's the kind of thing, isn't it?
That's a really good example, actually, Tom. That's a really good example. I mean, the malicious tenant damage cover I mentioned was a much more significant clause, but it is smaller things like that, exactly that, and the insurance company will be deeming that to be a fire risk, which is why the premiums are higher. You'll also find with HMOs, like all en suites, for example, the insurance is going to be much higher because you've got higher flood risk damage, because you've got more water outlets in the property. And it's all these little things that add up, and that's why I say you do need to read the small print, really. If you'd had a fire in that room and the fire service discovered a microwave, you could find that the insurance company doesn't pay out because it was an exclusion.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, isn't it? You could have a fire, for example. Obviously, hopefully nobody has any fires ever, but you could have had a fire caused by something completely unrelated, but they go, aha, there's a microwave there, and you're not getting paid out on something that wasn't to do with the microwave because you've not checked the small print. So yeah, it's just underlines it, really. I'm going to mention a couple of bits from the chat, mostly because I'm going to forget otherwise. Lots of excellent comments, lots of people saying thanks for the content and so on. Eric says, any recommendations? We're skipping ahead here, but that's all fine. We'll skip back. Eric says, excellent question. Any recommendations for an inventory or condition report software?
Okay, yeah. So I can let you know the ones we use. We use Reports to Go. So that's report the numeral 2 go, Reports to Go. We find them really helpful, and their support as well, if you've got any questions or issues, is really good as well. We've been using them for years. There are more and more out there now. So it's just worth having a look. If you just go to the App Store or Google Play, just put in property inventory software, I'm sure some options will come up.
Scooting back to the personality test thing, going backwards and forwards, mostly because I'm not very good at my job. Howard says we have a whole page of Genius U resources and links. If you want to find out more, you can check those out on asana-connected.com /wealth dynamics, and Asana is Alpha Sierra Alpha November Alpha. Bernard says, tuning in from Australia, that the gas bottles are very popular in Australia, and it's interesting. I've had a few different countries where people have come from, and suddenly I found gas bottles. One of them was disguised as a doll, a beautiful sort of almost full-size mannequin, except underneath it was, on the bottom was a big gas canister. Took us a couple of years to work that one out. So it's all interesting stuff. And Howard says that Cala gas heaters chuck out a lot of water vapor as well. So as well as the other problems, you might have condensation issues if people are using those things. I really liked talking about referencing, that you talked about various things that you do. I really liked that you checked the previous landlord. How much of a pain in the ass is it to find them? Because I imagine
well, we ask the tenant for the information. So as part of the process, we send them an online application form that they need to fill in. So not every tenant does fill it in. And, particularly say we are specialising in placing people from overseas, and they're actually usually coming from their home address. So it doesn't always work, but where possible, I would definitely follow up on that, and where the information is provided. We always ask the potential tenant to provide the information and to explain why they can't. So for example, are they coming from their parents' house, or have they been staying with friends or whatever? But it's always worth asking the question. You just never know.
Yeah, we had one guy who spent the previous 4 months at sea, so it's a bit difficult to get the landlord. But that's that's not everybody, is it? To be really clear, I think it's such a great thing. You sort of said this, but it's really worth stressing, is the joy of it is that a previous landlord, and a current landlord, doesn't have an axe to grind, does they? Do they? I also think that they've got no skin in the game, as it were, that they can tell you the honest truth. I'm never quite sure on the data protection side of things. So if somebody asks me oh, what about this tenant? I know I'm allowed to tell them that they're my tenant and they've been in the property from this day to this day. But if I say that they're great tenants or they're bad tenants, I'm not giving away information that I'm not sure I've got the right to give away. So I'm always really cagey on my references, just because I'm maybe not 100% sure of the legal position, which is probably on me to go and find out. But
no, that's a really good point, actually, Tom, and I didn't mention that in the talk. But when you are following up references with people, you do need the tenant's written authorization that you can do that. So you need to be very cognizant of GDPR. You need to be registered with the ICO. This is a whole separate topic that we haven't got time to go in today. But when we are contacting people asking for references, we do attach signed authorization from the tenant to say, look, we are asking these questions for a legitimate reason, and the tenant has agreed that you can provide this information to us.
Smashing. Well, speaking of contact information, I'm going to draw this to a close. How can people get in touch with you or find out about the programs and services which you're currently offering?
Yeah, okay. So the best way to get in touch is to email or phone. So it's info@thepropertymanagementprogram.co.uk. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully easy to remember. Our phone number is 01925 699 024. If we're not there, please leave us a voicemail and we will get back to you. And the current website is thepropertymanagementprogram.com. is the current website, and that just gives you an overview, introduction to Steve and I, what we do, some of the programs. But the best way, to be honest, is just get in touch and we'll have a chat. Do like to make sure that the services that we offer to people are relevant to them as well. It's not just like we're just trying to sell loads of stuff. It's like it needs to be relevant to you, and it's not relevant to everybody and useful to everybody. So the easiest way is just get in touch and have a chat.
I would just like to pop in, if that's all right, and just say we do use Sharon and Steve and have for some time, and the level of detail, and so I don't know how to keep on top of all the legislation, etc., but it is priceless. So I'd just like to say personal experience of working with Sharon and Steve, it's excellent. And thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you.
There you go. That's how we normally have no backup. What's it called? Testimonials. We've got 2 today. That's smashing. Thank you very much. That's Kathy backing up Sharon's wonderful service. If a reminder from my plug from earlier, that if anyone's looking to check that out, then it's the rather fabulous bestpropertymentoring.com to check out our property mentoring. A massive thank you to everyone who attended, everyone who's listening and watching, and of course mostly to our speaker Sharon Michon for taking the time. Hope everyone has a lovely weekend, and see you for the next one.